What's happening, truth seekers? Jim Rohn here, and welcome to the lab where we dissect the most complex human behaviors. Today we are on a particularly tough mission infiltrating the mind of the avoidant partner. Do you ever feel like you're in a spy movie? You're decoding cryptic messages, analyzing silences, and trying to figure out the real meaning behind their contradictory actions. It's exhausting. It leaves you feeling insecure and constantly second-guessing. You deserve more than that. You deserve the truth. So throw out the guesswork. In this video, I'm handing you the decoder ring. I am going to lay out the 5 psychological tells an avoidant partner leaks when they are losing control and falling for you. These aren't your typical romantic gestures. These are the glitches in their defensive programming, the subtle signs that genuine emotion is breaking through, even when they're fighting like hell to suppress it. Knowing these tells gives you an unfair advantage. It puts the power and the peace of mind back in your hands, allowing you to navigate this with confidence instead of anxiety. Make sure you stay for the entire briefing because the final clue is the one that contradicts everything you think you know about avoidance. If you're ready to stop guessing and start knowing, hit that subscribe button. It's time to see their hand. The first sign, and one of the most easily overlooked, is that they stay even when their instinct tells them to run. For someone with an avoidant attachment style, intimacy doesn't feel comforting. In fact, it triggers alarm bells in their nervous system. When a relationship begins to reach deeper emotional territory, real feelings, real connection, real needs, they don't feel safe. They feel threatened. Closeness to them means losing control. It means exposure. It means the kind of emotional dependence they've been taught to avoid at all costs. That's why their first instinct is almost always to pull back, to create space, to retreat from emotional intensity. So if they stay not when things are light and fun, but when things are getting real, that's no small thing. It's a quiet act of courage they don't know how to name. They won't say, "I love you, so I'm not running." Instead, they simply don't go. They don't disappear. They don't block you. They don't pretend nothing happened. They might not say the things you wish they would. They might not text every day. But their presence, even quiet, even awkward, is a deliberate choice that goes against their lifelong survival instinct. And if you've ever loved someone with an avoidant attachment, you know this all too well. They don't pull away because you did something wrong. They pull away because emotions scare them. So if they're resisting that urge, if they're staying in your life, despite how vulnerable things are becoming, that's a sign you matter. It's not flashy, it's not poetic, but it's real. And this is where you must choose to see clearly, not through the lens of longing, but through the lens of truth. But here's what's equally important. Their staying can't become the reason you abandon yourself. Just because they're still around doesn't mean you should ignore your needs, lower your standards, or tolerate emotional half measures. Maybe they're loving you in the only way they know how, by not leaving, but you still have every right to ask for presence, for clarity, for emotional consistency. Love is not just not walking away. Love is conscious presence, not accidental proximity. So if you're wondering whether they love you, look closer. They might not be saying it out loud, they might not be showing it in the way you're used to, but if they're still there, and they usually vanish when things get hard, that's their nervous system's way of saying, you matter. They might not know how to express it yet, but in their world, staying is already an act of love. Quiet, difficult, intentional, and real. Their decision to stay was the first step, a quiet but meaningful act of presence. But if you pay close attention, you may notice something even deeper happening behind that guarded surface. They start letting you into their inner world. And this is the second sign, one that anyone loving an avoidant should learn to recognize, because it doesn't look like love in the traditional sense. Avoidantly attached people protect their emotional world like a fortress. Not because they're arrogant or cold, but because deep down they carry a fear of being invaded, of being hurt, if someone truly sees them unfiltered. They are often skilled at keeping things fine, functional on the surface. They'll joke, they'll perform, they'll manage, but very few people ever get close enough to touch what's real beneath that surface until you come along. And when they begin to open that door, it won't come through grand declarations or tearful confessions. It will arrive in small, quiet moments, a story about their childhood, that changes the tone in their voice. A brief admission, "That kind of thing scares me," followed by a quick change of subject, a silent pause when you share something painful, and their simple nod as if they really get it. These moments might seem fleeting, almost casual, but they're not. They are doors they usually keep tightly shut, because they've spent a lifetime learning that opening up emotionally invites danger, not connection. So if you are being allowed in, know this: they do not do that with just anyone. For them, vulnerability is not a default, it's a deliberate decision. They don't share to impress. They share because with you, they've begun to feel something rare, safe. And that is the foundation of any real love, not passion, not drama, but the steady knowing I can be myself here and not be hurt for it. That said, you also need to understand their version of opening up won't follow the emotional timeline you're used to. They might share something personal, then fall silent. They might tell you something deeply revealing, then immediately joke about it or brush it off. That's not because they're being manipulative. That's how they regulate the internal fear they're still learning to manage. And if you respond with pressure, analysis, or judgment, they'll retreat immediately. But if you meet that moment with calm, non-intrusive presence, if you simply witness instead of fix, they will open further, slowly but intentionally. And this is where your self-respect matters most. You don't have to pry, you don't have to perform emotional acrobatics to keep the door open. You only need to be grounded enough to understand being let into an avoidance inner world means something, but it doesn't replace the need for reciprocal effort, clarity, and growth. So yes, appreciate the moment when they let you in, but don't lose yourself trying to stay there. Listen with compassion, but hold your boundaries, because you're not just someone they can trust. You're also someone who deserves to be loved with action, not just with passing fragments of their guarded truth. Sign 3. Being allowed into their private world is already a rare sign of connection, but if you look even closer, you'll notice something else, something quiet, practical, and deeply intentional. They start showing love through actions, not words. And that is the third sign, one that often goes unnoticed if you're only listening for traditional romantic expressions. Avoidantly attached people usually aren't great at grand sweeping declarations. Saying "I love you" can feel exposing, vulnerable, even unsafe. For them, words, especially emotional or committed ones, come with risk. Risk of needing someone, risk of being hurt, risk of no longer being in control. So if you're waiting for a cinematic confession, you might be disappointed. But if you look beyond the surface, you'll start to see that love is showing up in smaller, quieter ways, often through acts of service and support. They'll remember your favorite kind of coffee. They'll fix the broken chair you casually mentioned weeks ago. They'll clean your apartment while you're overwhelmed without being asked. They'll make sure your car has gas before your big meeting. These gestures might seem simple, even mundane, but in the avoidance emotional world, these acts are their version of "I care, I see you, I'm showing up." For avoidance, love is not about constant verbal reassurance, it's about being dependable. They may not flood you with affection, but they will be there when it counts. Their love language is reliability, not romantic fanfare. And when they care about you, they don't always talk about it, they build it into the rhythm of your life, smoothing out your day in ways that feel almost invisible. Until you pause and notice how much easier things are because they quietly helped. But here's where self-awareness matters. Just because someone helps doesn't mean they're emotionally available. You may feel their affection through their actions, but you still have every right to ask, is there real emotional connection here? Are they present not just practically, but relationally? Sometimes people, especially avoidants, will show up in ways that feel helpful, but stay emotionally distant. You need to be able to tell the difference. Loving an avoidant requires emotional clarity. You'll need to read "I care" in the way they remember small details or offer support without fanfare. But at the same time, you must stay rooted in your own needs. Don't fall into the trap of thinking they fixed my sink, so I shouldn't expect emotional depth. Actions matter, but they aren't a substitute for conversation, vulnerability, or mutual growth. So yes, appreciate the ways they show up. Recognize that remembering your schedule or solving problems before you ask is their way of caring. But don't stop asking for clarity, consistency, and emotional openness. Your needs are valid. You don't have to trade depth for stability. You're allowed to say, "Thank you for helping, and I still want to feel connected," seen and emotionally safe with you. Love in its most powerful form doesn't hide behind chores or errands. It moves through them, but also beyond them. If their actions reflect care, that's beautiful. But if those actions are the only thing holding the relationship together while conversations stay shallow or connection feels one-sided, then it's time to ask yourself, am I being loved or am I being managed? Because you are not just someone who deserves support, you are someone who deserves to feel chosen, understood, and emotionally met. Avoidants may not express love the way you're used to, but even within their unique expression, real intimacy still requires emotional availability, not just helpfulness. So if you're in a relationship with someone avoidant, and you've noticed these quiet efforts, recognize them for what they are, a form of love filtered through fear. But also remember that your emotional needs don't go away just because someone is helpful. True connection honors both their effort to show up and your right to be fully seen. Sign 4. And once you've seen their love in the quiet ways they show up for you, you'll start to notice another pattern, a cycle that's subtle but revealing. They withdraw, and then they return. It's not random, it's not a mind game, it's a deeply wired part of how avoidantly attached people regulate overwhelming emotion. And that's the 4th sign: they come back, even after pulling away. Avoidants create distance almost reflexively. When emotions rise, when the relationship moves toward deeper intimacy, they start to feel suffocated. Their nervous system, wired to treat closeness as a threat, sounds the alarm. So they retreat, not to punish, not because they've stopped caring, but because they genuinely need space to cool down, to self-regulate feelings they don't yet know how to sit with. But here's what matters most: they come back. Not because you chased them, not because you begged, but because at some level they felt safe enough with you to return. In the quiet, without pressure or blame, you held emotional space, and that allowed them to start questioning their own internal story. Maybe closeness doesn't always mean losing myself. Maybe love doesn't have to equal pressure. When they return, it won't be dramatic. You probably won't get a long apology or emotional explanation. They'll just show up again, a message, a meme, a random question about your day. But beneath that simplicity is a meaningful truth. Their return in their emotional world is a huge gesture. It means I was scared, but I still chose to come back. And for someone avoidant, that's a kind of love letter, one they don't know how to write out loud. Still, you need to stay aware. Not every return is rooted in love. Some returns are about comfort, habit, or unresolved patterns, not genuine readiness to grow. But if they return with intention, if they keep reaching out, if they want to stay in your orbit, even when things get emotionally complicated, that's a sign that the feelings haven't faded. And this is where your self-worth becomes non-negotiable. The real power isn't in the fact that they came back. It's in your ability to ask, what are they bringing with them this time? Is it real effort or recycled ambiguity? Is it growth or just familiarity? Because in the end, you are not just someone worth returning to. You are someone worth choosing with clarity, consistency, and care. And unless they return with those things, you get to protect your peace and stand tall in your truth. Sign 5. After they come back, sometimes awkwardly, sometimes through messages that feel random, you may notice them stepping into a new phase. They begin gently testing the connection again, and this is the 5th sign. An avoidant will test the waters before they truly move closer. They don't do this through deep apologies or grand romantic gestures, but rather through subtle signals, almost invisible if you're not paying close attention. They might send a text like, "Do you still have that cat?" or like a photo you posted 2 weeks ago. They may ask mutual friends how you're doing, or quietly reappear in your digital space. These moves seem small, but they're intentional. They're checking. Do you still respond to them? Is the door to connection still open? Are they still allowed back into your world? For an avoidant, this matters more than you think, because while they crave connection like anyone else, they're deeply afraid of outright rejection. Sending a casual message gives them emotional data without risking their pride. If you don't respond, they'll interpret it as a closed door. If you respond warmly, they'll begin to feel safer taking another step. But don't be fooled, this reconnection is not a commitment. It's just a feeler, a quiet heartbeat asking if intimacy still has room to breathe. And at this point, you must stay anchored in your clarity, because while they're testing you, you should be testing them too, not with passive aggression, but with self-awareness. Ask yourself, what are they looking for from me? Are they genuinely trying to rebuild something, or just soothing their own guilt or loneliness? If you respond too eagerly, if you fling the door wide open without pausing to feel into their intentions, you might find yourself in the same old cycle, close, distant, open, shut, hopeful, confused. So during this testing phase, your self-respect becomes your compass. Don't chase ambiguity. Don't mistake an emoji for a confession. Observe with self-love. If they're serious, they'll continue moving toward you with more clarity, more consistency, more emotional presence. If not, you'll know. And in that moment, you don't have to beg, you get to decide. Because being tested doesn't mean you have to prove your worth. It means you now have the power to say, if you want, back in it has to be with truth, not breadcrumbs. That's not a punishment, that's self-worth in action. If you've made it this far, thank you. That alone means you're taking your healing seriously, and that is a quiet kind of strength. Because not everyone is willing to face the truth. Loving an avoidant can be an emotionally complex journey, deeply connecting yet often confusing. But if you've recognized these signs from their decision to stay when everything in them wants to run, to the small acts of care, to the way they quietly return after space, then you're also standing at an important crossroads. Are you being loved through real presence, or are you holding on to potential that hasn't come to life? Remember this. Their presence will never matter more than your presence with yourself. You can empathize without self-abandoning. You can understand them without surrendering your boundaries. And yes, you can love deeply while still being strong enough to walk away if the love you're given doesn't truly nourish your heart. If this video made you feel seen or reminded you of your worth, subscribe to the channel. I'll be here continuing to offer clarity, self-mastery tools, and grounded insights for anyone ready to break out of emotional confusion and step into emotional power. And I'd really love to hear your story. Leave a comment below. What resonated most for you? Have you seen these signs in someone you've loved? Your voice might be the lifeline someone else needs to hear today. Before you go, please take this with you. You don't need to be chosen to be worthy. You can choose yourself, and that is always enough.